Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, we're going to do a quick study of a book written in the 1950s called The True Believer: Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements by a guy named Eric Hoffer. This book can be a little bit too real. It can be really depressing, and I actually don't recommend most people in the mainstream actually read it, just because it's a little bit too heavy. But if we look at the Wikipedia entry, you can see right here, this is the first edition, or the cover of the first edition, and it's about extremism, fanaticism, social psychology, personal identity. Again, it's from the 1950s, and I feel like there's a lot of wisdom back then that people uncovered that is just kind of lost today. And I think it's come from like a narcissistic belief that whatever we know now is, more enlightened than what was in the past. But I just don't believe that, because what happens is I read books from time to time, and especially books from generations ago, and I read it, I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of insightful stuff in here that I think we could definitely use today. And one of the things I like to talk about from time to time is the concept of leadership. Leadership is found everywhere, but and also poor leadership is found almost everywhere, right? So one of the things I want to talk about is that I want you to be a good leader, right? It doesn't matter what field you're in, if it's in business, if it's in just life in general. um, Good leadership is desperately needed. And one of the things that's happening in today's society is people just don't care anymore, right? One of the reasons is that, let's say you're an employee in a business, has bad leadership and there's no incentive for you to care. And that's why places like anti-work on Reddit are so popular, right? And so what I want to do is just take some excerpts from this book, The True Believer, and show some observations of how we might be able to motivate others to do their best and understand human nature. I think a lot of what's happening today is that people just work in theory and they don't, care about the result, right? Happens everywhere. But I'm just going to keep it to the field of business, just to kind of keep it a little bit neutral. But let me just kind of open this up right here. So I'm just going to show you what Eric Hoffer wrote about what not to do as a leader, especially in a business context. One of the things you shouldn't do is divide and conquer among followers and subordinates, right? Pitting one person against each other, creating an individualist dog eat dog environment is actually what you don't want as a business leader. Because I'm going to tell you why. Human beings are not geared towards individualism. Our minds just are not. Maybe at a certain point in life when you're like 12 or 13, yes. But as you get older, you're past the age 18, 19, 20, your mind just kind of is geared towards collective achievements, right? So I'm going to tell you about me personally. There have been times in my life where I made a little bit of money and I was really happy just because I felt like I was part of something, right? Who cares about my individual achievements? I feel like I'm part of something larger as a whole. And there have been times in my life where I've made a lot of money, but I've been very angry because I feel like a lone individual, right? And so human beings, yes, individual is great at a certain point, but we are collective creatures. We're actually tribal creatures, right? I don't know if you ever heard of Dunbar's number, but it's like a concept that because we're tribal creatures, I think you can only know up to like 250 people before like you start to forget their names and faces. So 250 people at a personal level. Okay, but back to my point, right? Human beings are not geared towards individualism. So whatever you do, if you want to inspire people, make them feel like they're part of a group. So I'm going to go ahead and actually read the book. There's a scan of the book here that you can get at archive.org. I think I have a copy of the book somewhere in my home, but I was just too lazy to find it, and I couldn't find a free PDF, so I have a scanned copy. So let's go ahead and zoom in, right? So I'm going to zoom in, but let's take a look at the bottom right here, right? So the bottom right. So if you take a look here, it says the employer's only purpose is to keep his workers at their task and get all he can out of them is not likely to attain his goal by dividing, rather playing off one worker against another. It is rather in his interest that the workers should feel themselves part of a whole, and preferably a whole which comprises the employer. So let's go to the next page. Okay, so employer two. So a vivid feeling of solidarity, whether racial, national, or religious, is undoubtedly an effective means of preventing labor unrest. So think about nowadays about how there's so many talks of strikes. There was that big Hollywood strike that cost Hollywood tons and tons of money for the writers and the actors, right? Because what's happening is that the execs see the workers as some sort of annoyance, and they kind of play games and do divide and conquer. And you can see in this book, it's actually not in their best interest to do that. You see the same kind of behavior in companies like Amazon, Walmart, but really, you do want your employees to feel like they're part of a solid whole, because that's the easiest way to um, inspire them. And if you're thinking of it from like a point of view of preventing unrest or crushing unrest or calming unrest, that's the best way. Make people feel important, and make, kind of like soldiers who are willing to go into battle for you, rather than, just well, not even training, because that's what happens a lot in workplace nowadays, and then just kind of discarding them like trash, right? Because that's actually what happens to, unfortunately, to a lot of veterans, is they fight the war, and they realize they're not actually a part of something. They feel used, and then they come home and they have a lot of traumas and issues, right? And I'm not saying I'm an expert on this, but one can only imagine what other people can go through. But it's commonly know that's, veterans have that type of issue, right? But again, so let's keep reading. Even when the type of solidarity is such that it cannot comprise the employer, it nevertheless tends to promote labor contentment and efficiency. Experience shows that production is at its best when the workers feel and act as members of a team. Any policy that disturbs and tears apart the team is bound to cause severe trouble. And here's the crazy part. So you know how a lot of like workplaces have like bonus structures to individual people based on their productivity? He says individual wage plans that offer bonuses to individual workers do more harm than good. Group incentive plans in which the bonus is based on the whole work of the team, including the foreman, are much more likely to promote greater productivity and greater satisfaction on part of the workers. So isn't that insane? Like, we as human beings do not really value individual achievement. No matter, even though our society socially, engineers us and hypnotizes to believe that, like even as far as like when we're young kids, but there's a reason why, so many people are unhappy, because we're not thinking of our collective achievements. Now, I do love my individualism. Don't get me wrong, but you need a little bit of both. You need, your own individualistic, be able to act upon your individualistic desires, but also think of yourself as part of a whole. And this is why, I think Bruce Lee, I probably should whip out, his books. I think he only had one book before he passed away, and then just kind of like study his movies, because I think, in his philosophies, he kind of talked about that a lot. Or maybe I'm just making it up. I don't know. But again, 1950s, when I read this, and I was like, I've never heard this from anybody in modern society. Like, if I have a conversation one to one with real life people, I never hear this kind of talk. This is why I think like books like these are amazing, because, you know, wisdom from, more than 40 years ago or 50 years ago, just kind of probably 70 years ago. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're at that part of life. But 70 years ago just kind of pops up. And it's like, whoa, this is like lost wisdom and knowledge. All right. So just wanted to talk about that, about human nature. You could kind of think of this as two ways. You could think of it as like, if you're a business leader, how do you motivate your employees? But at the same time, how do you control your employees, right? So if you're just a bad employer with a lot of labor unrest, just do the opposite what other people are doing, of trying to like, break up strikes, make them feel part of a whole. Because human nature, including myself, we're looking for group solidarity, right? Individual achievement is meaningless especially in modern society. I guarantee for anyone who's broke right now and listening to this YouTube video, if I gave you $10 million tomorrow, you would still be unhappy, right? Because money, yes, we do need it, but there's these hierarchy of needs, and eventually what we're looking for is to be part of a group, and that's kind of gone in modern society, no matter how much money we're making. All right, so this is Cranial Anti Mentorship. If you're interested in joining a group, go ahead and click the Google form link below. We'll schedule time to set up a call, talk to you about your goals, dreams, whatever it is, if you're interested in joining. Have a great day, everybody, and we will speak next time.